Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs. Welcome to Long Island Backstory, where we're filming in the Cablevision studios in Hauppauge, Long Island. Well, formerly Hauppauge, now Maltese. I don't know, some foreign company owns it. They fired half the people here, and the equipment pretty much sucks, so we have to bring our own equipment. But having said that, we are here in Hauppauge on Motor Parkway with my guest, Michael Marcantonio. And every time I'm planning on doing a show, I try to get something and I say, what will the viewers get out of the show? What's the reason for the show? And what can we do to change? And that's why I do Backstory, because I don't take any sponsors, as you see. So I have to do stuff that I'm passionate about. And one of the things I'm passionate about is politics. When I do shows on politics, nobody watches them. I could have the best thing. I think I could have Donald Trump or Obama sitting here, and I wouldn't get a lot of viewers. But this show, before you get turned off, yes, it's about politics, but it's about the backstory of politics. My guest today, as I said, is attorney Michael Marcantonio. He's from Northport. He's a lifelong resident of Long Island. That's important that I'm saying that. You'll find out why as we get into the show. In 2012, he went to Duke University Law School and graduated in 2015, and then moved back to his lifelong home in Northport. In May of 2018, he decided to run for the New York State Assembly on the Democratic line. He decided to run against an 8-term incumbent, Andrew Rea. And this is where the story begins. So, Michael, welcome to Long Island Backstory.
Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate it.
So first, let's talk about college. When you were in college, were you politically active?
As political as the average law student, I would say. I spoke about politics with my friends all the time, but frankly, I wasn't particularly active. I was more involved in civic type organizations, voter protection, that type of stuff. But I was part of the just the normal groups, but I was really focused on getting a job because law school is really expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you graduated Duke and you moved back to Long Island, and I'm assuming that you probably moved to your parents' house because at that point you had no job and probably a shitload of debt. So you moved back to your parents' house in Northport. What made you decide to run? How does this come? Because usually I would think that you come back and you're just looking for a job.
Yeah, well, actually, when I first moved back home, I graduated in December of 2015. Now, normally you graduate in spring of 2015. I took a semester off of law school. My mom was sick with Lyme disease, and I moved back home from Duke to Northport to take care of her. So I was bounced one semester over. So I graduated in December 2015, took the bar in February of 2016, immediately moved back to Long Island. I had to wait until the fall of 2016 to start my job. I got a pretty good job. I'm working at Kirkland & Ellis in New York City. Probably the best law firm in the country.
But you're not biased.
I'm not biased at all. I'm not biased. But I was living at home, just doing my thing, and I got involved with politics. I got involved with the Huntington Democratic organization. I became a county committee man in the Huntington Dems, and I volunteered for Steve Stern's congressional campaign at the time, and that's how I really got involved with politics on Long Island.
So you got the bug. So now you're going to the committee and you're getting more in tune to what's going on here on Long Island. What made you decide to run? Because that's a big step, especially for a young person to decide to run for office.
Well, I was always really interested in politics. My first internship out of high school, I was interning for Congressman Steve Israel, and from then on, I knew that I was really into politics, but never thought I would be running for office, 2 years after I graduated law school. But I was involved with the committee, and it didn't look like anyone was running against Andrew Rea, an assemblyman. And Andrew Rea is a guy who would run every single year unopposed. I mean, he's almost never had an opponent. And this year was no different. So I had mentioned, who's running against Rea, and they actually asked me. They said, I think you'd actually be a good candidate. Are you interested in it? And I thought a lot about it, and I had a good job, and as a millennial, you want to keep these jobs, and I certainly did. It's tough out there. There's a line down the street of people who want to work at these law firms, mainly because lawyers, I think 50% of lawyers right now are unemployed.
Really?
So it's a big problem, and I was very happy to have this job.
It's interesting. You said it's a big problem. Some would say it's a good thing that 50% of lawyers are unemployed.
Well, it's certainly certainly oversaturated. But I thought long and hard about it. And so I've been invested in the issues for quite some time, since I interned at 18 years old.
What are some of the issues that you were interested in?
So my main issues were just looking out at Long Island. There were two issues. One was Long Island centric, and one was specific to my community. Long Island, from my perspective, is dying. I think you and I could both look at the Long Island that we grew up in, especially the Long Island you've lived in, Gary, and it's totally going underwater. I mean, it's dying on many fronts. Our environment is dying. 500,000 septic tanks and cesspools every day are leaking waste into our freshwater aquifers, poisoning our water, killing our Long Island Sound, killing our fisheries. Can't go to the beach anymore without an algae bloom popping up anywhere. Our kids are dying. I don't think anyone out here has not been touched in some way or another by the opioid epidemic, which is really just wreaking havoc on our young people. And our culture is dying. I mean,
you got breast cancer.
Oh yeah, breast cancer. We got the Northern Grumman plume going on. It's horrible, and our culture's dying because we don't have a family. The Long Island I was raised in was a family-centric community. You move to Long Island or you live on Long Island, your kids graduate high school, college, trade school, whatever it might be, they move down the road from the parents. Not anymore. Kids can't find jobs on Long Island anymore. They're forced to either move to New York City, where they got to live in a one-bedroom, $2,600 a month apartment with 300 square feet in Queens. They can't live anywhere, and they're working odd jobs, and it's just, I saw that the community really needed some leadership, and I saw the most important thing, which was that all the problems had one source, which was our government. Our government in Long Island, and mainly in Albany, was corrupt. It's broken. It was not working for us. One thing you never hear anyone say when there's a problem on Long Island is, oh, let's go to Albany, I'm sure they will fix it. I mean, so I wanted to get up to Albany and really fight for some of these issues, but in particular, Huntington, Northport's in Huntington. Huntington is going through a crisis right now. It's the LIPA tax hike. Hopefully we can get to it, but a lot of Long Island viewers know about it already.
You might as well talk about that now, because I want to get that in.
Sure, let's get it.
Important.
Let's get it in. So LIPA is suing Huntington Township for 90% reduction in its taxes, its property taxes. LIPA owns Northport Power Plant. I live in Northport. Every day when I drive home, I drive by the smokestacks. Now, those smokestacks pay about $82 million a year in property tax to our community, which sounds like a lot. But actually, when you look at the value of the power plant, it's pretty small. They're suing for a 90% reduction in our taxes, which is going to bankrupt Long Island. It's going to bankrupt Huntington. And the reason is based on a lie. It's based on the lie that our energy rates on Long Island are high because of the taxes that we levy on the Northport Power Plant. Couldn't be further from the truth. The reason our energy rates are high is not because of our taxes, but because of the Lilco bailout. Remember when Lilco was bailed out? They built that ridiculous Shoreham-Wading River plant, Shoreham nuclear power plant that cost $6 billion. Private company, Lilco was a private company, and they invested $6 billion of their own shareholders' money into the power plant. When the federal government and the state government shut it down, what happened? They were on the hook for $6 billion. They had one of two choices. They could have declared bankruptcy, and we could have bought the assets for cheap, or they could have done what every big business does. They ran to Albany with an army of corporate lobbyists, and they got a nice, big, fat, sweet bailout from Albany to the tune of $6 billion, paid for by a $6 billion municipal bond that New York State government issued. Secured, meaning who's going to pay for it? It was secured by future rate increases by Long Island ratepayers. That debt has not been paid off to this day, and it's because of corruption in Albany, and we are still paying for it. That's why our energy rates are high, and they're taking it out on my community. And I looked around and I said, Gary, we're getting no leadership on this issue. Huntington is the home of Mr. Flanagan, State Senate Majority Leader. He has a responsibility, the most powerful state senator in the state, to fix this problem. Very easily fixable, but he has done nothing. And Andrew Rea has done nothing either. So I got in there and wanted to provide necessary leadership for this issue.
So now that you decide to run,
Yep.
and having run myself, and actually at the time running as a Democrat, I know there's a screening process where you go out, first you do your Huntington, well they screen you because they wanted you to run. But then you have to go to the party leaders, the Suffolk County Democratic Party. Did you go through that screening process?
Absolutely. When the Huntington Democrats first floated the idea that I would be a great candidate, I went through an extensive screening process with Huntington Democrats, and they seemed to think that I was a very suitable candidate. I also went through a screening process with the Suffolk County Democratic lawyers and then Nassau County Democratic lawyers. I then went to the chairman, Rich Schaefer, and the Suffolk County Democratic Party. Rich loved me, and the rest is history. I was the nominee. I was the guy that they were going to support.
And then they do their convention. They nominate you. Everybody gets them and claps.
Exactly.
So now you're nominated.
Yep.
You're all excited.
Yep.
Then you have to get on the ballot.
Yep.
Which is no easy task.
Not at all.
How many signatures do you need to get on the ballot for that?
Well, what you need is 500 signatures, but we went above and beyond. We got 1,200 signatures, and that's hard work. That's knocking on doors every single day, asking people in the dead of heat of the summer to sign these petitions. We worked real hard on that.
So you were really you were invested in it.
Yep.
Many other people were invested in it, because I know you didn't get 1,200 signatures on your own.
Oh yeah, the whole Huntington Dems. I mean, I got to thank the Huntington Dems. They worked so hard, and our campaign, we were running a real campaign. I raised over $100,000 for this
So
race.
you weren't in it as a name only. You were in it to win it.
Oh yeah. They said to me, to be viable. And that's a rule of politics these days. To be viable, you got to raise the money. I raised the money. I raised more money for this race than any Democratic challenger for the state assembly in the entire state.
So when did you hit a roadblock? So everything is going good. I think you raised almost $100,000. You have your signatures. They're all valid signatures. Now you're like, hey, I'm going to be on the ballot.
Yep.
When did you hit a roadblock?
So on the moment we set in the petitions, dropped them off. A couple days later, I got a nice, big, fat, beautiful lawsuit on my doorstep from my opponent. I was shocked. No forewarning. We had no idea this was coming. I didn't know what it would be about. We thought it might be about the signatures. Maybe they were going to try to do what they always try to do, knock off the signatures.
Which is why you got more than you needed.
Exactly.
Because you expect they're going to try to knock it off.
Open the lawsuit. They're suing me because they claim I am not eligible to run for the New York State Assembly because I am not a New Yorker under the 5-year residency requirement. Essentially, a lot of your viewers might not know this, but in order to run for the state assembly or state senate or any state office, you have to be a resident of the state for 5 consecutive years before the election. Now, good thing for me, I'm reading this and I said, oh, that's good because I've been a resident of the state every day of my life, except temporarily when I went away to school. In college, I went away to school in Pennsylvania, and law school, I went down to Duke in North Carolina. But as everyone knows, Gary, you don't lose your residency simply for going out of state for school. So I thought this was a sham lawsuit. I thought what they were doing was kind of a whisper campaign to really spread a rumor that I wasn't eligible so the unions wouldn't support me, so some of the interest groups wouldn't support me, and so they would undercut my support.
So they were claiming that you were a resident of North Carolina.
Yep.
And they were doing that because you voted in college. That was their one reason, not that you changed your driver's license or bought a house there. Yep. Or did anything else. You voted.
So we go to
as they tell you to do in college.
So we go to court, and they introduce one piece of evidence. You'd think even the judge remarked, usually in these type of cases, you're introducing all this evidence to prove that this person's not a resident. Introduce one piece of evidence. They said, while I was a student at Duke Law School, I voted down there. I voted in 2012 and 2014. They admitted everything else. I was a New York State resident. I paid taxes in New York State every year. New York State driver's license, my doctors, my phone bills, my credit cards, my bank accounts. I lived in New York for half the year every year because every second I wasn't down at Duke in law school, I was back in New York. They admitted all that. But they said, because you voted down in Durham, because you voted on Duke's campus, you are no longer a resident. Now, the problem with that argument was that when I was a law student, not a shred of New York State law said, simply by virtue of voting out of state, you sever that 5-year residency. In fact, what the law was in 2014 when the last time I voted was the opposite. The law was that you weigh all the factors, and if you vote out of state as a student, that's one factor of many. So Michael Blake, who's a current assemblyman right now, in 2014 he ran for the first time. In 2013, Michael Blake voted in D.C. They sued him in 2014. He won a suit. He's up in Albany right now. So we thought we were good. We thought we were very good on that ground, and we thought this was just a sham.
So being that they were calling you a resident of North Carolina, the good thing for you is, I guess, you paid in-state tuition, right?
False.
Well,
Nope.
good for your parents, man. So you didn't pay in-state, so you weren't a resident.
And that's how
But
ridiculous.
how could you have it both ways?
That's how ridiculous the notion was. Imagine you're a New Yorker, you're a Long Islander, you go to Pennsylvania, you go to Penn State University. All you have to do to pay in-state tuition is you just register to vote. It's ridiculous. So we thought we were good. But here's the problem, is that there's this case that came out in 2016. It was a case called Glickman. Don't need to know the case, but essentially the Court of Appeals, highest court in the state, said about someone who wasn't a student. He moved out of state for work. And when he got his job down in D.C., he registered to vote down there. Now, that's a very different set of
And
circumstances.
I think you would agree that is a change in residency, wouldn't you?
That's almost certainly a change of residence. You move out of state for work, and you go so far as to register to vote. Yeah, you're intending to stay there. But students are very different. Students are actively encouraged to vote on campus, not because they're North Carolinians or Pennsylvanians or Delaware. It's because they are encouraged to partake in the political activities of the college campus. And most importantly, it's because college students have a fundamental right to vote where they go to school. That's the crazy thing, is that you wouldn't have these protections if people considered college students to be actual residents of the college community. The reason we have these extra protections, and why the Supreme Court has stated unequivocally that college students can vote on campus, is because most people try to get them off the voter rolls of where they go to school. And so this was a shock to me. And guess what they did, Gary? They retroactively, because remember, the last time I voted was 2014. They retroactively applied that rule 2 years behind, even because the rule came out in 2016.
So you would think that even if they were going to do that, which we don't agree with, that they would say, okay, but it's from the date of the law, because then at least the colleges, hopefully now they're telling people, hey, just so you guys know, if you vote here, you can't run for 5 years.
Exactly.
But at the time, they couldn't have even done it. So even if you didn't know, they say ignorance is no ignorance is
no excuse.
No excuse for.
Yep.
So this isn't even ignorance because there wasn't a law.
I could have looked up every single shred of New York law, and it would not have said, "Don't vote. You won't be able to run." When I voted in 2014.
So the decision in the Suffolk County Court is that you're not eligible.
They applied this ruling, Glickman 2016. They applied it, which was specific to people who weren't students, for the first time in New York State history. I mean, the ruling not only been out since 2016, but it's the first time they applied it to students as well, which means that every single New Yorker who goes out of state for school and on campus does what the school tells them to do, what all their friends are doing, which is to register to vote on campus and vote, every single one of those people, for 5 years after they graduate now, will not be able to run for office.
So, Mike, can you go down to North Carolina and run for office?
Nope, can't do that because I'm not a North Carolinian. I got no ties there. I don't have a driver's license there. I didn't pay taxes there. Nothing.
So when you think about that saying is, Michael Marcantonio, because he voted, you cannot run anywhere in the whole United States of America for 5 years.
Exactly, and frankly, this is going to be a chilling. It's going to have a massive chilling effect on student participation, young participation in our politics. But worse off, it's going to discourage young people from voting. I mean, what's the message I should send to young people? Oh, actually, if you're going away to school, send your ballot absentee, even though you have a fundamental right to vote where you go to school. Now, say they say, you know what, I'm going to apply absentee. There's a whole host of issues with voting absentee as well, and so young people are protected, except in this one circumstances, and that's endemic of the corruption and the problems with our electoral system.
And let's
here in
just
New York.
briefly, the judges here, you would think that if you're going to a court here, you're going to go in front of a judge who's maybe an election expert, because election law is another whole field of law. So you're getting a judge that they pull out of the Supreme Court who could have been doing personal injury cases or divorce cases on Monday. Now on Tuesday, he's you're in front of this judge making a decision on election law, which he may have no interest in, no experience in, but he's setting law, which is not good because, of course, this is another issue, is legislating from the bench.
Exactly.
Because basically now this judge is setting a law.
Exactly. In fact, the entire doctrine of the 5-year residency requirement is judge-made law. The legislators didn't vote on this. They didn't say, oh yeah, let's apply it to students or whatnot. The only law that was passed was in 1938 in the New York State Constitution, and all it says is you got to be a resident for 5 years. It doesn't say that has to be continuous, it doesn't say that has to be immediate, and it doesn't say what constitutes residency. So all of these rules have been created by judges, and they can make decisions. They can say whether or not it should apply to students. They can say whether or not it should be continuous. And so the fact is that if the judges cared at all about promoting civic engagement among young people on Long Island and throughout New York State, they certainly wouldn't have kicked me off the ballot. So all that hard work, everything I did, it was for naught. And the worst thing about it was this. We took it up to the Court of Appeals. We took it up to the highest court. The Court of Appeals wouldn't hear it. I argued in front of a
first thing you went to the second department in Brooklyn.
Yep.
What happened there? And I have bad experiences there because
I had a bad experience too.
To me, the way they look, they're a rubber stamp for the lower courts, and they look at it with. I tell people they're looking at it with an eye of what can we do to throw this out so we don't have to deal with it.
It's exactly right. The easiest thing that the Brooklyn Appellate Division could do, second department, is just say, yeah, the lower court got it right. Now let us go home. Remember, this is over the summer. They don't work over the summer. This is the only time they got to call into the office is to do election law cases, and they get in and they just dismissed me. They gave me some time. It was a fair hearing on paper, but their ruling was so inconsistent with just common sense and with what the law used to be just 2 years ago. And so you tend to think they either aren't really well versed on election law, or they are really just not looking to enfranchise and empower young people to run for office.
They're not looking for it. When I ran for office, I did a protest where I spoke out against my ex-wife and the judge, and they gave me a refraining order, an order of protection saying I can't talk about my ex-wife, the judge, or the case anymore. Okay, no problem. I'll go to court the next, and I'm running for office, and that's my platform. So I go to court and I say, look, I'm ready to go to. I don't mind. Go take me to trial. I'm going to win at a trial. I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, the trial's set for about 7 months from now.
Yep.
So I run to the appellate division, not asking them to throw out the refraining order, the order, saying just give me a speedy trial because I'm trying to run for office, and you guys are going to hurt me if I can't. The second department said, no, you have a court date, deal with it. Talk about interfering with the election process.
Unbelievable.
So now you go to the highest court where you have to, you can't just put in an appeal. You have to, as I understand it, apply to be able to put in an appeal? Is that how, you're a lawyer, so
yep,
I'll let you explain that.
So the Court of Appeals can decide whatever cases it wants to decide, right? This is the highest court.
Think how scary that is. But
this is supposed to be enforcing justice. And what is more important than the right to vote and the right to run for office, right? If you don't have that ability, are you even a citizen, right? So the fact is that I take this incredibly important case. The premise of the case was, if you side with my opponent, 100,000 New Yorkers who go out of state every year, 20% of whom register to vote on campus, it's about 20,000 students every year, will be barred from running for office for 5 years. Isn't that an important issue? Isn't that a misapplication of the law? Especially because all the law says is that you have to be a resident of the state for 5 years, and they say, sorry, we're not going to hear the case. And that's where the law stands right now. And so young people throughout Long Island, throughout New York, who are challenging this corrupt government, who are challenging a government that does not work for the people, who have energy, passion, and are motivated to get involved. Especially, Gary, as you know, Long Island is just shedding young people. Young people are fleeing Long Island.
You would think they'd embrace it.
People were so excited about my candidacy because they said he's going to attract young people, policies for young people. He's got a good perspective on what it is to be young. And they selected me. But the judges said, you know what? We know better than the voters. We know better in our ivory tower than the voters. And they summarily dismissed my case, and that was it.
And it's not just you. You have 1,200 people who, not that they had to vote for you, but supported you enough to sign your petition. Yep. You raised almost 6 figures. So they disenfranchised all those people too. But maybe this is, somebody would look at it and go, well, who cares about this guy? Well, maybe the incumbents do.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why on Long Island we have such a huge problem with incumbents what do they win, 90-something% of the time?
Yep.
And some of them, it's their lifelong career now.
Oh, yeah.
And they, once you're in for 4 or 5 terms, they can't afford to get out. They'll do anything to stay in.
The incumbent I ran against was an 8-term incumbent. Most of the races he runs every 2 years, unopposed.
Has he ever had a real job, this guy?
Never had a real job in his life. He got out of college.
Talk about public service. Public service.
So he's from a political dynasty. His mother is a very powerful person in Huntington. He gets a cushy job as a legislative aide, works his way up, and becomes an assemblyman, and since then has done nothing. I mean, frankly, absolutely nothing for the community, for 2 reasons. One, he just doesn't want to do anything because he's not a guy that works very hard. And I don't mean to disparage him, but frankly, you can't look at the results and say anything else. And the second reason is he's a minority in the state assembly, meaning he's part of 40 Republicans in the state assembly. There's over 100 Democrats. The state assembly is like the House of Representatives. If you're in the minority, you have no power. You can't chair committees. You can't introduce legislation. You cannot do anything. And so he has no results. So you'd think this would be a great seat to run for. But here's the problem. You have to raise in this corrupt system about $200,000 just to run for a state assembly seat. Who is going to do that? Well, you know what? If you're super rich and can afford to do it, you're not going to want to run for state assembly. And if you're of modest means, you can't run. So how are you going to run? I found myself in this unique position where I'm not rich, but I had a lot of a big group of people that were supporting me. So all small dollar, not all small, all donations from individuals. Some of them were big dollars, but some of them were small dollars. But no corporate money, no big business money, no special interest money. I was running a real grassroots campaign. All I raised was from my friends and family. That was it. And so I was doing it the old-fashioned way, and they saw me as a real threat, apparently, and they went to the courts.
Well, it is a good old boys club, out here where they want to keep them in. And I tell people, no matter what party, and a lot of them, not all of them become the same. You mentioned Flanagan, who lives in your district. I mean, this guy's the worst, in my opinion, the worst politician on Long Island. This guy's just a horrible politician who does nothing for his constituents, nothing for Long Island, doesn't even give lip service because he doesn't meet with you unless you're a special interest and you have a lot of money. But in his district, who's going to run against the man because he's got a lot of money, and they're going to keep people out who, like you, like me, who want to run. So what needs to change in the last 2 minutes? What needs to change in the system?
What needs to change? What I was running on was reforming the government by first getting money out of politics. We need a public financing system, in my opinion. It shouldn't be the case that in order to run for office, you got to be a millionaire or you got to be very well connected to millionaires. But that is the case. Right now, you can't run against John Flanagan. Kathleen Cleary is doing a great job, and I hope she wins. And by the way, Avram Rosen, I'm going to give him a shout out. He has now replaced me in the 12th Assembly District. If you liked what I said today and you liked my message, please support Avram Rosen. But what needs to change? We've got to get money out of politics. We got to have independent redistricting. The fact is that John Flanagan's district is gerrymandered like hell. My district, the 12th Assembly District, is gerrymandered like hell. It spans from the North Shore to the South Shore. There's not a single town that is intact. Every town is broken up into little pieces, and we've got to get the special interests out of politics. They are dominating. What should be the case is individuals have power, the voters have power, taxpayers have power, not the special interests that completely dominate Albany. If we do some of those things and many, many more, that's what I was running on. If we do those things, I think Long Island's going to have a bright future, but we got to do it because Long Island needs a good government. It needs it.
Michael, when can you run again?
So that's a great question, actually, Gary, because the courts.
That's why I get the big bucks.
The court's doctrine is so incoherent. They didn't even tell me when the 5-year clock started since 2014. So we're fairly confident that if I want to run again, the next time I can run is 2020. But who knows? In order to find out for sure, we might have to get sued again and fight it again. And this is the problem.
By then you'll give up.
But they put every obstacle. You got to be crazy to keep doing this, but they put every single obstacle in your way to prevent you from running. And you know what? Some people get burned out. Some people don't want to do it. But I love this community, and I really want to fight for it. And frankly, I think we need more young people getting involved in politics.
Great, Mike. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Look forward. I'm sure we'll hear more from you. I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for joining us on Long Island Backstory.
Gary Jacobs and Long Island Backstory, winner of the Huntington Lodge No. 124's 2018 Community Service Award in recognition of the efforts to offer an alternative access to news stories of interest to all Long Islanders. Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.
I tried Oxy at a couple of parties. I didn't know it'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.